Well, good morning. I enjoy speaking at Moms and More every year. It gives me, it forces me to put things together in a way that's actually presentable. So it's actually good for me to actually prepare to even speak to you. So I hope it goes as well for you as it has gone for me, but I doubt it. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things. I noticed one of the things that y'all have is mentoring moms. I don't know if I completely understand that, but I too have people that mentor me. So when I'm preparing children, I just kind of wanted to show them off a little bit. But a lot of men are trying to figure out women as you guys are trying to figure us out, and we know that. And so I've looked for books over the years of things that would help men understand women. And I finally did come across a book. You may have seen it at your house. Your husband may have already picked it up, or you may have picked it up for him. You would recognize it when you see it. But this is the closest that I've ever really come to finding a book that might help us understand how you all think and feel, because we're on it. You can see this guy here is on, like, it's taken 3 years to get that far, and he's still just beginning to understand women. So don't take it personally. Sorry about that. But I do want to talk about expectations, and one of the reasons that couples come into counseling, I want to read you some quotes or just some things that have come out of my office and things other counselors experience. But unmet expectations are really a critical part of it. I ran across, in fact, I was talking to a client about a month ago, a couple, about expectations and how we can get in trouble with expectations and all that kind of stuff. And they said, there's a magazine in your lobby that actually says kind of the same thing. So I went and got the magazine and looked at it, and I thought it was pretty impressive. Now, this is a couple from Amarillo. I have no idea who they are. I don't know if their book is any good or not. But they were featured in an article in the Nashville Christian Family magazine, and he had written a book called Marriage on the Rock. And this is what the quote said. People say that money is the number one reason for divorce, and communication is number two, but I believe it's deeper than that. I believe it's disappointment. And then they went on to say it's not money, it's not communication, it's unrealistic expectations. And the reality of divorce is that the unrealistic expectations increase. People tend to increase their expectations and decrease trust. And I see that all the time. I want to just kind of show you some things that are often heard in counseling sessions, and these are reasons why people are ending marriages and why marriages sometimes are on the rocks. I wouldn't say it's always. It's just as a general rule, this is a pretty familiar theme. One of the things I've heard and others have heard is our marriage is no longer providing the purpose that it once did, meaning it's not like it used to be. At first it was really romantic and a lot of cool stuff was going on. And I think most of you that have been married longer than about 15 minutes realize some of that begins to fade a little bit. And if we rely on what it used to be, sometimes we'll have expectations that that's the way it's going to be forever, and it's not. And that's a good thing. It's an okay thing, but it kind of shocks us when that happens. Here's another one. I didn't get what I went shopping for. He's not what I thought I was getting, or she's not what I thought I was getting. I did all the gender things correct for this group, hopefully, but you're no longer meeting my needs like you used to, and neither is this marriage. You aren't the same person you were before we got married. The old bait and switch. You showed me one thing, but you gave me another. And I see familiar looks. I see the start. I know some of you have thought these thoughts. We've all thought these thoughts at one time or another. My friends or parents say that I deserve better than this, that I don't have to put up with this and I need to leave this marriage because I deserve better than that. And I think it's good to talk to families sometime, but sometimes those messages can send us places that we're not really ready to go. Another one, and this is my favorite, I think. I'm not happy anymore in this marriage, and doesn't God really want me to be happy? And I have a lot of answers for that. Not necessarily today does he want you to be happy. Maybe he wants to work on you and your marriage. A lot of times he'll use marriage as a catalyst to show us what the edges are in our own lives that he needs to remove to make us more like Christ. And so marriage is the perfect tool for that. It just stinks while it's happening because it hurts so badly. And we begin to try to change the other person to be like we want them to be. And guess what? They're trying to change us to be like they want us to be. And so all of y'all, I would imagine, have experienced this. But I did hear kind of a quote, and you'll probably have heard this. There's a famous Dr. Forrest G. that would have said this: Uh-oh, I'm sorry. It's me and my slideshow. He said life, but he really would have said marriage is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that's very true. I mean, I did this for my daughter, Elisa, because she's a Forrest Gump fan. But it is a great quote. Marriage is like a box of... You see this colorful, beautiful box, and you think, that's what I'm getting. But you really never know what your marriage is going to be like. There's no way... I heard a counselor years ago say the only way to prepare for marriage is marriage. You get married, you do marriage, it starts getting ugly at times, or needs aren't getting met, expectations aren't getting met, and as you open the box, you realize what you really have. You've got two sinners, you've probably heard this, two sinners in a sinful world and a sinful relationship expecting it to be perfectly meeting their own expectations and needs. And it's just not going to do that. So I have some actual things that I think will help you. It's not just, hey, get over your expectations and just drop them. I'm not going to tell you that. At least not yet, not while you're still here. I don't want you to run away so quickly. But there's a couple of kinds of expectations that I want to talk about. The first one I just kind of want to mention. One is reasonable or realistic expectations. And I could talk for an hour just the difference between those two, and I'm not going to do that. But I want to talk, so I'm going to unpack more. I would say two pretty good examples are the law. For example, I can reasonably and realistically expect that my wife's probably not going to rob a bank this afternoon. I just think that's probably not going to happen, and I think it's a reasonable expectation. And if you do, sweetie, bring the cash home like we usually do, and we'll go from there. So I think that's reasonable and realistic. I think she can say the same for me. So they're just general law things. Are things that I think we can expect in a relationship, okay? But at the same time, another one that will be a little tricky is marriage vows. You both agreed at the altar to love and to cherish, better for worse, richer for better worth. That was probably a Freudian slip that was pretty good. For better, for worse, for richer, for poor, till death do us part. But when you get to the love and cherish, what does love mean to you, and what did it mean to him? What does cherishing mean? I bet y'all's definitions of love and cherish are different. And so you get into marriage and you agree that we've both said we'll love and cherish, but I don't really like the way you're loving and cherishing me lately. And the other person is saying, I'm loving you and cherishing the way I always have. Well, not when we were dating. Well, that's not fair. So that's why I say if you go back to there for the rule, you're gonna always fall short. We're always gonna fall short. I would say Teresa and I have a great marriage. I believe we do. She says she believes she does. I'm sure I'll find out later. But we don't meet each other's expectations. She thought we did. We had a long conversation, and I said, I don't think she said, you're the perfect man, and she compares me to Tom Cruise and all this stupid stuff, and I know better. I mean, people don't come up to me and go, we need you to be on the cover of XYZ magazine. I get it. I'm not Tom Cruise or Tom Selleck, but she'll start bragging on me and thinking that makes me feel real good. And she'll say, you're the perfect husband. I said, no, I'm not. And she said, no, you really are. And I said, no, I'm really not. And I said, I don't meet all of your expectations. And she said, yes, you do. And I said, no, I don't. And she said, yes, you do. And I said, no, I don't. And she said, well, give me an example. So I named off about 6 things. And she went, you're right. And she got real serious. And I said, it's okay. You don't meet all my expectations either. That's okay. We're not going to meet each other's expectations, and we can still have a great marriage. The truth is, we either focus on the expectations that aren't being met, and we get bummed out, or we start comparing against other people, or what we wish it was like it used to be, or we get over ourselves and our expectations, and we move on to the great qualities of our partners, which is our job individually to focus on the things that are healthy. I'm not saying ignore and go into denial, but there's a choice. You can either focus on the great qualities and traits of your partner or the not so great qualities and traits. We all have both. I have both. We all have. Not because I have it, we all have it. We all have it because we're sinners. And we all do some pretty good things sometimes, and we all think some pretty bad things or do pretty bad things at other times. So this is not a go out and have a lot of fun and do a lot of bad things talk. But the other thing that I really want to spend more time on this morning is talking about unreasonable expectations and unrealistic expectations. And they're a little bit different. They sound like they're the same word, but they're very different. I would say, going back to the marriage vows, I think it's a reasonable expectation that you will love and cherish till death do you part, being faithful to each other. But all of us know couples that have not been faithful. So even though it was reasonable, a good vow that both people made at the altar, it didn't go so well. So it turned out to be unrealistic. Does that make sense? So it was a reasonable expectation. We agreed on it. But the reality is it didn't pan out that way. And there's a lot of brokenness and a lot of brokenheartedness. And a lot of us are children of divorce or have gone through divorce or have gone through these types of things. And I don't make light of them. I think they're huge. So I want to talk a little bit about this second type. And I'll elaborate a little bit more in a minute. But a lot of times we create most of our unhealthy or unreasonable expectations. And I'll show you how, and I'll show you some phrases that our brains use. And I hope it will help you understand and kind of learn how to kind of get a handle on this area of all of our lives. This is something we all struggle with. And these often are born out of hurts or losses or fears or insecurities. I need you to tell me, now this is not me, I need you to tell me I'm pretty every day because and then in parentheses, because I'm really insecure and I need to know that I matter. So now we've actually gone to a person to give us our value. And you can see, it sounds wacky when I talk about it here, but we still do that. Or I need you to tell me that I'm successful as a man. Or thank me for, say, what a great job I did mowing the grass. Well, you like mowing the grass. Well, but I didn't have to mow the grass. Yeah, but that's kind of your job. I don't want to thank you for something that you're supposed to do. And we get caught up in junk like that. That sounds silly maybe in here, but some of y'all have dealt with that, or some of y'all will be, or I know a lot of couples that are, that they don't want to praise you for something you should be doing, because it's an insecurity. If I tell you that, maybe you'll take me for granted or won't notice what I'm doing, and so there gets to be a little bit of a competitive thing that goes on between couples. I have a feeling y'all know what I'm talking about. You don't have to raise your hands, that's fine. Some of the sources of the unmet expectations, one of them is our families of origin, our parents and upbringing, siblings and stuff. There are experiences that happen sometimes as we're growing up that are hurtful, or our family did it this way, so we learned what normal looks like by watching them. So that's what normal is. Does that make sense? Now it's a fact, that's what normal is. But then you've got your family of origin experiences, your hurts, your loss, your disappointments. Here, we keep things private, or we never talk, or we always talk, or we drink a lot, or we do this. And so you come into the marriage with your set of, this is what is normal. And your normal and his normal, I bet you they're different. If you're like every other couple in America, they're different. Our past are different. That's where we get our shoulds from. You've probably heard me talk about that before. Well, you should save money. You should do this. We should raise our kids this way. We should spank. We shouldn't spank. A lot of the shoulds are not your original thoughts. They're things that have usually been passed down from generations. So we have to be real careful that we're not reliving our family of origin rules and passing them over to our spouse as if these are facts and this is the way you're supposed to do it. I don't know about y'all's parents, but maybe they're not highly qualified to tell you how life is supposed to go. Maybe they weren't highly qualified to say, here's how you have a great marriage. Here's how you resolve conflicts. Yet we take it as if it's the gospel truth because they did it. I don't want to disappoint them. Even if they're not living, we still worry about disappointing what mom would have thought or what dad would have thought. Does this make sense? So we're kind of always battling this. So our normal versus his normal in a relationship, and as if mine's right and yours is wrong. And yours is wrong. If someone is raised in an abusive home, then I expect abuse. Or I expect you to never even raise your voice. Or when you get intense with your voice, I hear yelling. And the guy's going, I'm not yelling. You're screaming. And you can't control how somebody else hears things. That's where empathy and compassion and that we do a lot of work like that in counseling, just trying to help each other understand what is the background of each other and how do you move towards each other with compassion rather than judgment and arrogance and self-righteousness. We all do that. So I just want to encourage you. Another one will be society's rules and shoulds. Church rules and shoulds. The Christian culture that we live in the Bible Belt of America, there's just things you don't do. There's things that you're not supposed to say at church. You dress a certain way at church. I'm guilty of this. I mean, the first time I wore jeans to church, my wife knows, I was miserable. I mean, this was a couple of years ago when maybe one person wore jeans. I was so self-conscious because you're supposed to dress up in church. But I wanted to be me, and I paid a price. I was miserable for the whole service because I wondered what people were thinking about me. I bet they think I'm a loser. I bet they think I'm a worthless counselor or a deadbeat guy. And I thought, but this is what's comfortable to me. And so I had that battle going on. Maybe y'all do the same thing on Sunday mornings. I don't know most of y'all, so I don't know what's going on in your in your world. But if society is beginning, or what we're supposed to do comes from a society, then we're in trouble. Because we're getting rules from the wrong places instead of, okay, husband, help me understand how I love you well, and let me help you understand how I'm looking for love, and maybe you'll hit the mark from time to time, and maybe I'll hit the mark from time to time, but never always will I do that. And I try to get rid of never and always in my counseling sessions. Or the way we used to be, as I mentioned earlier, if you compare today's marriage with dating, romance, adventure, excitement, somebody noticed me, you text me all day, when will I see you again? It's really the most phenomenal time in just about everybody's life. And we want to just solidify that and put it on the mantle and go, that's our relationship, and I expect that for the rest of our marriage. Everybody does that. Men are complaining that this particular thing's not happening like it did. Maybe it's physical intimacy. But when we were first together, it was all the time, or it was weekly, daily, or whatever. But now I'm lucky, yada, yada, yada. Y'all have heard those stories. Some of y'all lived that story. And the men are saying, or the women are saying, yeah, but you used to really, pursue me and chase me and take me to dinner and bring me flowers. And he's going, yeah, well, I was dating, I was on the hunt, and I've got you now. So instead of when will I see you again, the wife is going, well, I better see you at 6:30 because dinner's going to be ready and the kids are going to be here. So everything changes after the honeymoon is over. But when the honeymoon stops driving the relationship and all those emotions of, wow, isn't this awesome? He gets me, she gets me, I'm noticed, I'm special. Our brains kind of light up like a crack addict. I mean, it does. They actually take pictures of brain scans, and it's very similar. The pleasure part of our brain of being noticed. Many of y'all have lost friends, or friends lost marriages just due to Facebook. I'm not dogging Facebook, but grandmothers use it for pictures. I've found some old friends from my past that I really have loved reconnecting with, but I have some dear friends that have lost their wives or their husbands over Facebook relationships, where Facebook actually hooks you up with your past. You tell them where you went to school, and then the old boyfriend says, man, you look as good today as you did in high school. And your brain lights up and you're gone. I've seen people literally leave their husband and children over an old high school flame, and then, of course, as you can imagine, that doesn't really pan out very well because it's all hijacked. So I don't want to get off on that, although I did. But here I come. I'm coming back. All right. So again, our past experiences, the hurts that we've had, I expect you to to never yell at me because when I was a kid, I was hurt badly in that place. Or I lost loved ones, so I need you to never leave me because I have abandonment issues. So my issues, if they start controlling you, I've got an issue. I need to work on my stuff. So maybe that's one of the places. I have no idea what's next. There we go. Or our irrational core beliefs. A rational core belief is something we believe about ourselves that's just not true. Good example, I'm inadequate, I'm worthless, I'm a horrible mom, I'm a horrible provider, I'm a loser, I'll never amount to anything. Sound familiar? Does to me. I lived that life for years and years. It was horribly depressing. But when that's the way you see yourself, everything you hear from your partner or anybody gets twisted to fit the grid of what I believe about myself. So the goal in therapy for me is to try to decrease the power of those old messages that are junk. They are irrational. They're not true, but we believe them as if they've been seared into our hearts, and we have a hard time getting rid of that junk. But we've got to get rid of it. It has to stop defining us. And who we are in Christ really does need to define us much more than who we thought we were with them, whoever them was that hurt us a long time ago. Everybody in this room has been hurt or felt insignificant at one time growing up. We've sinned against our children. My child is here. I'm sorry. I've told her that. We sin against our parents. Our parents have sinned against us. This isn't a cop-out, but we are sinners. We're going to sin. Sailors sail. Sinners sin. So you don't get to choose what sins your husband sins against you, and he doesn't get to choose your sins against him. But we really need to move, instead of expecting perfect behavior from each other, to really more of a place of acceptance and understanding and repentance and forgiveness and moving on, and not dwelling that you lied to me or you did me wrong or you deceived me or you never told me about that, or whatever things you guys are dealing with. We just get hung up on some things that aren't necessarily the major things, and they can ruin a relationship. because it's touching in to our irrational core beliefs. And so it's like, I need to keep you at arm's distance now because you've hurt me. So I'm going to kind of guard my heart so that you can never hurt me again. So I'll keep you here because this is where I trust you, or maybe friendships you keep here because if you get close, a lot of times the theme is, if you really got to know me, you'd know how rotten I really am. And then you and I both would know the same thing about me, and I can't allow that to happen. So I see that a whole lot. I've used to do that a whole lot. Comparing to what we see in our friends. Well, they have a great marriage. He treats her really well. When we've gone out to dinner, yada, 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 but they kiss. He put his arm around her. What you don't know is what happened when they went home. I get to hear what happened when these kinds of couples go home. And I'm not saying it's everybody. I'm just saying what you show is kind of like the church thing I'm talking about. What you show on Sunday morning, what you show when you go out is rarely who you are. It's rarely who they really are. So if you're comparing yourself to their best photograph, so to speak, in a out to dinner situation, you're using a bad mirror to show how your marriage is really stacking up. And I know a lot of women would say that they compare a lot to other people, and it's more of a comparison thing. Maybe a movie. I think movies I love movies, by the way, but I think they're horrible to give us an idea of what forever and ever amen looks like, or happily ever after. I hate that one. I mean, or Mr. Right, or we were watching a TV show the other night, and the lady's saying, I think this is the one. And what's behind that usually is, this is the right one. It's going to go well. He's Mr. Right. There is no Mr. Right. I got bad news for you. There's a Mr. and he's sometimes right and he's sometimes wrong and he's sometimes thoughtful and he's sometimes selfish. He sometimes watches ESPN all day long. He sometimes takes you out on Valentine's. He sometimes forgets your birthday or your anniversary. But he's a guy and you're a girl and we make mistakes. But if we're comparing it to what movies have said, or the wedding day is one of the biggest days in y'all's lives. Y'all live for that. Most women do. We don't. We're living for the honeymoon. That's all we're planning. Y'all can see the bridesmaids all lined up and pretty in their pretty little dresses and stuff. We don't care what color they're wearing. We don't care what you're wearing. We just want to get married and go on and be together. So we're all looking at it differently. And if you say yours is right and theirs is wrong, you're probably going to miss something. You're just very different, and understanding the differences between men and women is real important if you're going to enjoy your marriage. Barbie and Ken's another example, I think. I don't know how many times y'all have married them. I think it's thousands. If we took the whole room here, I bet y'all, Barbie and Ken have been married 100,000 times, would be my guess. Here's just some quotes that I've heard that I like, that expectations are premeditated resentments. That's pretty heavy. That's pretty true, but that's pretty heavy. And we do that. I'll show you that in a minute. They can move from a wish to entitlement. I wish you'd take me to dinner. To you better take me to dinner. You better tell me you love me. You better show up on time. I need you to meet my needs. I need you to. All this demand language instead of a request that's invitational. And we'll get into that more. But they can move from a wish to entitlement, which is more of a demand than a request. And we'll get into that. Here's another one. Having expectations is projecting onto reality and will always lead to disappointment. You're getting the feel for how poisonous expectations can be. Now, it's okay to have expectations. I just want to help you get some reasonable ones so that you're not seeking so high that our marriage has to be here for me to be okay with this marriage. Maybe here, and we'll get to that in a minute, hopefully. I find that when I expect too much from other people, I'm setting myself up for disappointment. An expectation about the behavior or performance of another person expressed to that person may have the nature of a strong request or an order, and I put in parentheses a demand. When someone is requiring something or demanding something from you, how does that feel? You got to do this. I demand that you do this. You must do this. What does that feel like? You don't have to speak out. I know what you're thinking. It's horrible. We feel controlled. We feel backed into a corner. We often acquiesce to something like that, or we rebel against something like that. But demanding someone do something, whether it's through, I'm going to be disappointed if you don't, and I just want you to know that so you can know what you're doing. If it's that kind of a soft demand, or if it's a literal demand, it doesn't go over very well. None of us react very well to demands. And if we start doing all your demands, or y'all start doing all of ours, then the one giving up everything is losing themselves. The person that you actually fell in love with, as you're trying to fix them or they're trying to fix you, the fixing is in disabling the person and taking, almost like taking limbs off of them. And now you've got a shadow of what you thought you married, or they have a shadow of what they thought they married. But it's more peaceful. So for peace, I'll do that. If it'll just shut you up. If you'll stop, a man's theme would be, if you won't critique me, if I don't do this, you won't critique me. If you've ever critiqued me painting, I will never paint again, as a man's mantra. If you've ever critiqued the color, you'll pick it out from here on out. Because we're afraid of failure. We hate being questioned. Don't ask me why. That's another. I did a talk years ago. It's on my website. You can go see it. It's called Men and Shame. And Criticism, the Perfect Storm. It's just a short little blog. Everything's free. Also, Angie asked me to mention, last year I spoke on how to get all your needs met in your marriage, and she told me to tell you that that's also on the website, chucksugar.com. At the bottom right corner is videos, and they're free. Just go watch them if you want to. It may be 30 minutes of your life you can't get back, but I'm sorry about that. But I also will try to put this talk up there if you have friends that want to see it, or if you know somebody that wasn't here. But enough of that. I don't make any money off of it. If it helps you, that's a good thing. I'd have learned to make money off that, but anyway. Okay. Here's some of the fallouts from unmet expectations. An unmet expectation usually leads to disappointment. Disappointment often leads to resentment. See if this sounds familiar. I don't know. Maybe you've been here before. Resentment usually leads to anger and unhappiness. Unhappiness usually leads to distance in the relationship, affairs, medication like drinking, drugs, porn, you name it. TV shows, romance novels, whatever. Other people, or divorce. I see a lot of divorce. I see a lot of couples divorcing because they're just not happy anymore. And when I help them understand, happiness is really a very temporary time in life. It's like saying, I'm not going to stay married because I'm not having fun anymore. They're about at the same level. There's a more mature marriage for all of us that's not so, all the time. It's just good, mature marriage where there's some great romance times, and there's some, well, I won't say great arguments. There's some meaningful and necessary arguments, but the commitment of love compared to the romance of love, there's no comparison. The romance of love, if you're relying on that feeling to be happy in your marriage, you've already lost. Because if you've been married longer than about 15 or 20 minutes, that's not going to stay the way it always was. So it needs to go deeper than that. I would even venture to say, and this is a little dangerous, but I would say when Christ was on the cross dying for our sins, the perfect act of love, I don't think he felt lovey-dovey feelings like that, Chuck Sugar, this is so cool, the way they nail me and are hanging me. I don't think he felt love. I think he did love in the most perfect way we can never understand. We won't till we get to heaven. But that's much more the image of what marriage needs to be. It's the deed of love. It's the commitment of love. It's the steadfastness of love. And you hope for romance, and you work on your marriage. I'm not saying let's just, let her ride. You work on your marriage, but if you're expecting these highs all the time, or if you're looking to your partner for your security or your identity or your significance, you're in trouble. Because if they ever provide that for you, you're hooked. So now you have to have them to be you, to be secure. And there's a much better place to go for that than your spouse. And a lot of couples, most couples I would say, come in and there's some of that hookedness that's going on that's very unhealthy. You want to want and choose your partner, not need them. If it's a need, I'm just telling you, it gets pretty messy. Here's some examples that kind of give you a little bit of an idea of some things that I've either said or heard people say. When I saw you walking in with the groceries in my arms, I expected you to what? Help me. Are there any other groceries I could get for you, baby doll? That's what you're looking for, I think. Okay, that's pretty heavy, isn't it? That's not what you want to hear. Man, that must be tough. That's not what my wife wants to hear. I've learned when the garage door opens and I know she's been to Costco, I start moving downstairs where the car is. And I go, hey, I was just in the area. I wondered if I could help you, Of course, she drops, she falls out when that happens in shock. But I think the key to this is, when I saw you walking in with groceries in my arms, I expected you to. Was that a wish? I really wished you would. Or you're supposed to be there, or you better be there, or I demand that you read my mind. And because sometimes I've done this, I'm just telling you, it's very true. When my wife walks in with 2 bags of groceries, I go, she's got it. She seems to have this under control. I get my remote out. I start clicking on to the next show. That's right, isn't it, sweetie? She's thumbs up. Get out of here. Go on somewhere else. You know too much. Here's another one. When I told you I was tired and hurting, I expected you to talk to me. What do you want? Love me. Listen to me. Ask me how my day was. What else?
Rub my feet or my back.
Absolutely. Rub my feet or my back. Did you hear that? Anybody hear that? I'm just kidding. That's one of mine. Yeah, if I say, my nose is a little, I just want a back rub. That's really, I'll make up any excuse to get a back rub. It can be, the stock market's down. Man, it kind of hurts here. That's what I'm wishing for, but I have a tendency sometimes it comes across as a demand. I really don't mean it that way. When the baby was crying and dinner was boiling over, I expected you to do something, you stupid idiot. Just do something. Help me. Yeah. So again, is that a wish or a demand? It usually is more in the form of an expectation that leads to a demand. I would say usually. I don't know. Y'all are probably perfect, and I'm the only bad one here. When you knew I had a tough day at the office, I expected you to listen, pour me a glass of wine, pour me a third glass of wine. What do I hear 4? Okay. But you want something. My wife does not want me to fix her day. She doesn't want me to say, well, because I'm a counselor, I've got answers. They may not be right, but I've got solutions for these problems. Would you like to hear them? Would be what my brain is doing, and I have to just tell them, this is really true. I visualize, Ziploc zippers on the bag, not the ones you squeeze together and hope you get it right and they hopefully click someday, but just the zipper. I envision a zipper on my lips, and I literally zip my lips shut and just say, shut up and listen. Because she doesn't need a counselor. She wants a husband to just listen. And some days I go, you know what? That's a horrible day. Sometimes that's what I want to hear if I've had a rough day. Wow, that's a bad day. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do for you? Rub my back. It's number 2 right here. So we all had these. And then again, one more. When the kids went off to college, I expected you to...
Romance.
Absolutely. Very good. Romance me. Do what? That's right. Let's spend some more time together. I was kind of hoping when the kids went off to college, it was just you and me, baby. But then after 18 years or so, I don't even know you anymore is what I hear more than anything. I have couples coming in with their kids going into college going, we don't know what to do when they get out because we don't really know each other. So we want to get to know each other so that we actually have a relationship that's kidless for the rest of our lives and we can move into the golden years. And I say we've got a lot of work to do, but let's get started. Because that really is the goal. When the kids are gone, if our whole life has been wrapped up in the kids, when they're gone, it's who are you? I keep doing what I always do to get my value, go to work or go to, sporting events, and because we go and we just start distancing and divide. Yes, ma'am.
Start working on that.
That's right. Yeah, you do. That's a great point. When couples come in early, like a couple of years early, I just tell them, good job. We can start working this. Let's get date nights going again. Let's work on creative ways to communicate, like talks. Learn how to really resolve some of these 8,000 conflicts that y'all have not resolved over the past 20 years. Let's start working on those and find a way to do this that's actually respectful and loving, that builds your relationship and your love again. And again, when you get to that point, if you look back at the romance of the early days, it's just hopeless for some people. And the truth is, it's unrealistic to think that that's the way it should be, but a great relationship is what it should be. It won't ever be what you've ever had before. It's going to be different, but knowing that going in helps you understand how to lower your expectations. Don't stuff them and be miserable. We'll talk about that. Wishes and demands. An unmet wish will usually lead to sadness and disappointment. To go back to the groceries or any of those ones that I gave you. So if it was a wish, you'll be a little sad, somewhat disappointed, but you won't be destroyed. You won't be angry and resentful and you do that every time kind of thing. But an unmet demand will usually lead to hurt, fear, insecurity, disappointment, bitterness, and resentment. Any of those sound familiar to y'all? They do to me. I mean, it's so understanding how demanding we're really being with our expectations is real important to gauging how your marriage is going to go. A request or wish usually represents a desire. Much different than a demand. A demand usually suggests entitled. I'm entitled to your help. I deserve it. I demand it. I ought to get it. I should get it. My father was never there for my mother, and you're always going to be there for me. Or my father was always there for my mother, and I want you to be like him. We can't win either way. But the key is we've got to move these demands down to wishes and desires. And then if we're disappointed and sad, we can talk about it. We can say, I kind of expected, I was kind of hoping for some help. I realize you didn't. I'm not destroyed. I just need to express how I'm feeling. I'm kind of hurt inside. I'll get over it. I love you. But in the future, it would help if you would, instead of next time you better boom, boomity boom. Do you see the difference? One is very invitational and non-confrontational from an attack standpoint, but it's very assertive. This is what I really wish. This is what I really want. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but it is something that I want. I just want to express what I want. It's not a demand, but it's real important to not... some people have if I'm thinking it, you should know it, and now I'm going to hold you responsible for that. Surely you knew when I said A that I meant B, C, D, E, and F. Hope I got them in the right order. I really work hard on that. But you see what I'm getting at? A lot of times we want you to read our minds, or y'all want us to read your minds, and we don't do that real well. Okay, so being more literal about what you really want, at least expressing it. But if you express it not in an entitlement, demanding way, if you express it in a loving way of, you know what I'm really looking for? I really wish sometime you would, whatever. It goes over better than, can I tell you what you do wrong? And let me just tell you what you do. You never seem to yada, 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 yada. We don't like that, and y'all don't like that. So why do we do it? It never works. I mean, it's really, you'd think we would all figure that out. This is one of the areas that I think is really important, and you'll find yourself doing this if you're human. Unmet expectations don't necessarily mean what we make them mean, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And a conditional statement is, if this happens, then this. If you help me, then you love me. I know some of y'all got the email or you see the handout on your thing. I would fill it out, or if you've already filled it out, that's a real good thing, because we all do this. I do it. What's that? Okay, great. And I've got a timer up here too. That helps me. But keep doing it. I told Angie to please keep me on time, because I'd go for about 5 hours. Yeah, I don't do that part right. But thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. Let's go back to criticism again. Let me talk about this one more time. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm teasing. All right. So I know I matter to you when something. When you don't take phone calls during dinner. I know I matter to you when you don't come home and get on your computer and work all night. I know I matter to you when something. Or I know you love work more than me, or your friends more than me when. And see, we make that up. Does that make sense? I made up that. I know I matter if that's my insecurities talking. That's my hurt or fear of abandonment or whatever talking. It doesn't really mean that. If you ask guys, a woman typically in counseling will say, well, you don't love me anymore. And he goes, what are you talking about? Of course I love you. Well, you're not like you used to. Well, you know where I'm going with that. And she'll say, well, you used to do this, 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 and this. And he'll go, I love you. I work. I provide. Our kids are in private school. You're driving the car you always wanted to drive. We got a house that's bigger than anything we've ever dreamt of. That's me loving you. Let's go back to the love and cherish in your marriage vows. That's kind of what a guy's thinking. I'm here to provide and protect for you. That's how I show love. Yeah, but you showed love a lot differently when we were first dating. It's like, well, yeah, that was then. But this is, in reality, that's how men get their value. I don't think it's necessarily good, but it's pretty normal. I mean, if we get our ultimate value there, then I think we're in trouble. But we want to provide for you guys. We want you to like us. We want to meet your needs. Most of us, I can't speak for every husband, but as a general rule, these I know I matter wins aren't true. That's just how I feel. I know I matter based on my own definition of mattering, that when you do this, you must not love me. And guys are usually like, how can you say that? But it's just because our shoulds, our rules, our whole thing is different. Here's another one. I know I don't matter to you when you fill in the blank. I know you don't love me when. Do these sound familiar? Do y'all do this? Do y'all ever? You'll catch yourself, after you've heard it now, start catching yourself doing these conditional statements and then talk against them in a sense of just saying, you know what, that's not necessarily true that I don't matter. If I want to know if I matter to my husband, I need to ask him, does this mean that I really don't matter to you? Or is this just, am I way off on this? And usually he'll look at you like, are you stupid or something? I know y'all have never heard that, but Some men think those thoughts. Of course I love you. I work. And then you'll hear the litany of stuff that they do that you don't really care about. And then they'll think, oh, you're entitled. You just think I do that. I'm supposed to do that for you because it's all about you. No, it's just this is how men love sometimes. And it's very different than how women love. Men are afraid of a whole different list of things than y'all are. So we're working to cease our fears. You're working to cease your fears. And they're dramatically opposite from each other. Here's some more conditional statements that I know you love me when you come home, give me a hug, and say, how was your day? Or I know you love me when I tell you I'm hurting, and you go, I'm so sorry. Tell me about it. But does that really mean I don't love you if I don't do that? Or could it mean that my brain is racking itself trying to figure out a problem? Or I'm blown out from work today, and I just need some space to get my head together? Or whatever. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. That's why I said sometimes we make expectations mean a certain thing. We create conditions like this so that we can feel secure or significant or that our identity is good, that we're safe. And again, I would say if all those things come from your relationship, you're in big trouble. It will never provide your security for you like it needs to. It will never provide your significance like you need it to. Only God can do that. I'm just telling you, I've been down this road and struggled through everything I'm talking to you about. And it has really changed my life to realize, it's like I spoke last year on the needs thing, only God really meets my needs. My wife meets some of my marriage needs, but my needs, significance, identity, security, that's only God. He's the only one that has the power, because in the way I hear it and the way I believe it is I'm robed, like literally putting on a robe I'm robed with the blood of Christ. Which means God sees me like he sees Jesus. And that doesn't seem real fair to them, but you know what? I like it. Because it doesn't mean I can eat, drink, and be merry and go rob banks and kill people and all that, but it means that God sees me white as snow, even though my behavior is not white as snow, and neither is yours. My thoughts aren't white as snow, but the grace of God covers all of that. Does that make sense? And so if we're not extending that same grace to our husbands or our wives, then we're not really doing what God is doing for us. We ought to, out of love, lower our expectations to a realistic perspective. It's not realistic sometimes to expect you to love me all the time the way I want to be loved. Maybe that's my insecurity and my issue. I need to lower my... Now, some people say, oh, I see, so I should just stuff all my expectations. I should just quit expecting. I go, no, don't quit expecting. Let's just make them more real. Let's lower them a little and make them less demanding. Because I promise you, couples feel the pressure of an expectation, and they will do the opposite almost every time. They'll move away. Men move away. Women move usually towards the man. I call it, or I've heard it called, a pursuer withdrawer. So the more the man moves away, the more the woman moves towards him. Women, as a general rule, like to fix relationships. That's y'all's thing. Y'all do it better than we do. I admit it. But we have no clue what we're doing, so we don't really want to talk about relationships, because then we're going to look stupid like we are in relationships, because men, as a general rule, aren't raised to be in touch with our feelings. We're raised to ignore our feelings and be a man and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's what our dads probably said, and that's what their dads told them, and yada, yada. So we're dealing with two completely different... The Mars and Venus thing is not that far off. Let's see. When you do this, I know I don't matter to you. That's one of the big ones. When you do this, when you come home and go get on your computer, when you come home and ignore me, when I'm doing this and you do this, I know I don't matter to you. And we make that up. Do y'all understand what I'm saying when I say you make it up? It comes out of our own insecurities. Now, I'm not saying don't expect anything from your husband. I mean, you're married for the love of people. You should expect at least your marriage vows. You should expect each other to be kind and loving and gentle and faithful. But it's not going to happen every day. We're humans. We're going to keep making mistakes both directions. And I would say this about disappointments. If unmet expectations lead to disappointments, what do we do when we're disappointed, unhappy, or feel like we don't matter to someone? And here's just a list of things that some people do. Do we go to self-pity, poor pitiful me? Do we pout? Do we shut down and want to quit and get out of this, or go somewhere else and be anywhere else? Calgon, take me away kind of a mentality. That's an older commercial. Do we get critical? A lot of people get critical to try to get things to change, which really does the opposite. It actually shuts people down. Do we complain? What do we do when we're disappointed? Do we get sad and depressed? Do we get hopeless? Are we hurt? Are we annihilated? If you're annihilated or hurt badly, it might tell you that your expectation is way too high, because if I don't get this, I can't be happy or enjoy my life. That sounds like that's on the level where God ought to be. And we need to keep our expectations to where it'd be great if you did this. It'd be good if you did this. It'd be bad if you don't. But it's not the worst thing in the world, and I don't need out of here and got to leave. And we have a tendency to make our needs or expectations the most important thing in the world. If I'm not happy, I want out of here. Now, I like to be happy too. Don't get me wrong. I like happy. Happy's a lot better than sad. But sad sometimes is part of life. Sad and loss and grief and those things. When we get disappointed, do we get resentful or angry? This is what I believe. I believe that the quality of our lives and our relationships, and particularly marriage today, will be largely determined by how we deal with the disappointments of unmet expectations. If it's entitlement and we shut down or need to punish or need to complain and pout or whatever, we're hurting ourselves because our expectation that we made up isn't happening. And so we're miserable, blaming you for my misery, but it's like, you've probably heard this before, it's like me drinking rat poison hoping the rats die. I'm dying. So the resentment and stuff that you hold in or I hold in because our expectations aren't being met, we're the ones that are miserable about that, not the other person. They probably don't know what they've done or what we're going through unless we communicate it very well. I have half a minute left. I'm just going to say this. I would say your marriage wasn't created to meet your expectations. I don't think there's anything in the Bible that says that's what men are for, is to meet all your expectations and y'all are all supposed to meet ours. Same thing about your spouse. And I would say God doesn't exist to meet my expectations. I've had some things happen, and so have you, that have blown my mind and hurt very badly that I didn't expect. God's ways are higher than my ways. And when I start thinking my ways are higher than His, I get in big trouble. And so I need to remember that God's got a timeline for me and a plan for my life, and I need to stick with that plan. Let me pray for you guys. Father, I thank you for this time together. I thank you that you're a loving, forgiving God. Help us to love and forgive our mates as you love and forgive us every day. Help us to extend grace and mercy in a way that you do. Help us that your gospel that is in us, those of us that have accepted Christ, Lord, may it be expressed in the way we live, in the way we love, in the way that we forgive, in the way that we expect. Lord, help us to lower our expectations and not demand so much. Lord, help us to give our partners freedom and space. You give it to us every day. We demand control sometimes. Forgive us when we try to do your job. I thank you for every woman that's here that represents a child in another room somewhere in a relationship. Lord, bless them and their relationships. I thank you for bringing us together, Lord, in Jesus' name.